There was supposed to be an evidentiary hearing this past Thursday. The judge canceled it at the request of the prosecution. The prosecution asked for this because the defense subpoenaed Jennifer McCabe, Brian Albert, and the two state troopers to appear at the hearing. So it appears the defense strategy backfired. Now what? We're going to go over these events, and I'm going to show you a clip from a discussion on Court TV and my reaction to it. Before we even begin, I have to be upfront. A lot of you won't like my approach here. Whether you've already decided that Karen Read is innocent or that she's guilty, you might not like it. I started the Reddit page, Justice for Karen Read, but for me, justice means whatever results from the truth. And I don't know what happened that night. To me, neither the prosecution's story nor the defense's story makes sense at this point. If you are very sure what happened, you won't like my videos. So there's your trigger warning. My interest in this case is precisely because I think she might be innocent. I think Boston police officer John O'Keefe might have been killed inside the home of Boston cop Brian Albert. I think it's possible something really strange has gone on here, a cover-up to end all cover-ups. However, I also think it's possible that none of that happened and that the Alberts and the McCabes and the troopers are being, well, smeared. I'm always honest with you guys, and I'm going to be honest here. If this ends up being a conspiracy, it will be really good for my YouTube channel. We'll gain a bigger audience and have a lot of fun talking about it. I've met people through this channel that I've quickly become very good friends with, some of them in law enforcement. It's been rewarding. So it actually will be better for me if Karen Read is innocent and there's some kind of crazy, compelling conspiracy going on here. And my channel would no doubt be a lot more popular if I simply become part of a crusade to prove her innocence. But that's just not how my mind works. I care about the truth. I care about being fair. I understand that all of us are vulnerable to buying into a narrative about something, then filtering the facts to fit. So I'm going to be honest and fair and balanced. And the people that like that approach will hopefully stick around. Okay, so late last week, the judge made a ruling in the defense's favor. She ordered the town's animal control officer to hand over to the defense any information on the rehomed dog from the Alberts house. She went further by explaining her ruling in writing, which she is not obliged to do. She said the defendant's theory that O'Keefe was attacked by a dog is supported, quote, by expert evidence. That doesn't mean she agrees with the conclusion. It means the defense theory is not based on mere conjecture, but rests on an expert's opinion, an expert hired by the defense. So it's enough to justify ordering animal control to provide what they have to the defense. Does this mean the judge is starting to take the defense theory seriously, that someone inside the house attacked O'Keefe? Well, not necessarily, because as she weighs things, she's also looking at the kind of hardship that it would cause or the level of invasion of privacy. She knows it really doesn't cause much hardship for the animal control to release those records, and there's no real major invasions of privacy. If those records include where the dog now is, maybe the defense team can get the new family to allow the dog to be examined. Maybe they can get some DNA evidence, but that's really not a big imposition on the family. However, because of this ruling, the defense had good reason to be hopeful that their arguments were landing on fertile ground with the judge. Then along came Wednesday. You see, the defense took this ruling as such a positive sign that they went too far. Their next move was to send out those subpoenas to Brian Albert, Jennifer McCabe, and the two troopers. But this move had a nearly disastrous effect. The prosecution then requested an emergency hearing to ask that Thursday's hearing be canceled and that they proceed to pre-trial. The judge agreed, and she clearly was angry with the defense. So this baby's going to trial now. The reason it's a disaster for Read is that she had flown up the forensic data expert to testify about what he found on McCabe's phone. Why would this testimony be allowed in an evidentiary hearing? Well, I'm no lawyer, just an old bartender who pretends to be living in a yellow cottage. But what the defense was shooting for was one of two things, either a home run or a triple here. If this expert could convince the judge that McCabe had indeed searched for how long to die in the cold at 2:27 a.m., then there was a chance this whole case might actually be thrown out. That search alone wouldn't do that, but the search combined with what looks like a pattern by the prosecution to hide evidence from the defense might. A long shot, sure, but if the forensic data expert could make a strong case for McCabe's search being at 227, then the judge would be much more likely to allow the defense team access to Brian Albert's phone. And that was the real purpose of the scheduled hearing on Thursday, to hear arguments on the phone. Why would McCabe's purported Google at 227 be relevant to handing over Albert's phone? Because at this point, the legal justification for handing that phone over, invading his privacy, is weak. Hear me out. Don't jump ship yet. Give me a chance. We're merely talking about the legal merit. The defense has to show there's some evidence on which to base the theory that O'Keefe went inside the home. Right now, we have the health app data from O'Keefe's phone, but that's vague and disputed, so that can be debated at trial. We have the injuries to John's arm, but unfortunately, we have a medical examiner who described those injuries as abrasions. So the defense really wanted to show that McCabe made that 227 search and that she deleted several messages and phone calls from her phone at that time. If that evidence could be made convincing to the judge, there was a good chance she'd grant access to Albert's phone. Instead, we got Prosecutor Lally explaining to the judge that in addition to Trooper Garino's analysis of the phone, they now also have some outside expert with a lengthy list of qualifications. Lally gave his own interpretation of those conclusions. Against that, all Karen Reed had was defense attorney Jackson's claims. She now didn't have the opportunity to present their expert because this was not an evidentiary hearing. It was just a hearing about whether to cancel the hearing. So no witnesses could testify, just the lawyers. Yikes. What a strategic blunder by the defense. If they hadn't sent those subpoenas out, they would have been able to present their expert on Thursday. So I don't know. This is no dream team of attorneys right now. Well, the decision on Albert's phone remains in the judge's hands. And based on her tone Wednesday, I don't think the defense team is too optimistic. Like I said, I'm no lawyer. We bartenders would handle the phone issue in a common sense way. Yes, Brian Albert is entitled to privacy. There could be embarrassing things on that phone that have nothing to do with the death of O'Keefe. At the same time, we can see why not only Karen Reed might be entitled to know what's on that phone, but there's a legitimate public interest. And that's who the prosecution is supposed to represent, the public. Because if Karen Reed didn't kill O'Keefe, someone inside that house almost certainly did. And they're not now under investigation. So if judges were bartenders, they'd probably offer this solution. The forensic data analysts from both sides could set up their equipment inside the judge's office. They'd agree to take no data out of that office. They'd produce their results, and then both sides would look at this evidence with the judge present. The whole purpose of that would be to simply see if there's something worth seeing. For example, if Brian Albert is making calls and texts all night and is active and awake at the time the EMS crew is outside trying to revive John O'Keefe on his lawn, that would show his testimony was dishonest. He claims he was asleep when McCabe called him and that he never went outside because by the time he was awake, O'Keefe had been removed. Well, if he was busy making calls and texts, that would be enough for the judge, I think, to decide to hand over the data to the defense for a closer analysis. Well, that's how a bartender would settle the dispute. With both sides present, the judge could look at what they found and decide if there was a there. Okay, so that's about it. I just want to say, please keep in mind that coming up, starting next week, I'm going to be posting a series that I've been working really hard on. It's not like these normal discussion things. There's a lot of video clips, a lot of work went into it. And it's a really serious case. Most of it is centered in New England. So for the Boston people here, New England people, they might be interested in this. But it centers on the idea of when you're looking at these child predators, a lot of these cases that we're going to look at here were done by a couple of researchers, one who has a book out and the other one who had an Emmy Award winning documentary. And they're focused on New England cases that took place in the 70s and a little bit in the 80s and 90s. So some time ago and mostly pre-internet age. But what they found was a really strange thing that I didn't believe at first. When I read one of them, Dave McCrath's book, I started to open my mind to the possibility of that. But it was the idea that in these cases with these predators, which I would have assumed were all lone wolf cases, actually the predators, seems to be evidence that those predators were working together. And not only that they were working together, but they were trying to support their habit by creating porn during these cases, horrible porn, and selling it. So the evidence is going to be not conclusive, but these guys are on the trail in this investigation, and I'm getting on the trail a little bit with them, and we're fighting this stuff. So the more you guys can support this, I think you'll find it interesting, and the more you can support it, we'd really appreciate it. Okay, thanks, guys. Hit subscribe, hit notify, take out an ad for us, do anything you can help us out. But I appreciate it. Love to have you here. Thanks. Have a good night.